All right, we're back here for round four. Drake Sasser is out of here. Tanning Grace, the Tanning Grace, has replaced him. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing all right, Joe. I have the enviable problem of I slept too much last night and for too long, and so I'm actually a little tired because of that.
All
I
right,
don't know if you
well,
ever get that problem.
we can fix that in the future. We'll just put you
Sure.
on the morning shift, and then you won't have a chance to do that.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
we added Pioneer to the series for this event. So we're playing Modern, Legacy, and Pioneer. And you probably know more about the early history of Pioneer than almost anybody because you had a podcast with Ross Merriam that was dedicated to Pioneer for you've expanded to other formats now, but for quite some time it was just Pioneer every week.
Yeah, for about the first year, I think, of the podcast, we talked about solely Pioneer. And if you remember, I'm trying to remember exactly what else was announced in the announcement when it happened. It was, I think it was a banned and restricted announcement came out. And then they kind of had this like throwaway paragraph from Watts where it was like, oh yeah, and by the way, we're coming up with this other format called Pioneer, and it's this. And I remember reading the paragraph, like cut and copying it, sending it to Ross and being like, this is awesome. Like, I can't wait for this. So we had the podcast within like 6 hours. We had our first episode out within 12 hours. And yeah, absolutely love the format and really, really glad that it comes back, that it's making a big comeback because I think no paper magic or very little paper magic over the
Mhm.
last about 2 years now has really hurt that format because this is one that was meant to be played more in paper and I thought could even possibly supplant modern one day as like the most popular format.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's tough because it didn't have a chance to really grab a
Right.
foothold before we shifted on to online only.
Yeah.
And so like Modern Legacy well established and then Arena has different options. Although I mean sounds like eventually
Mhm.
Pioneer will be more or less on Arena, and that will be then at that point really primed to explode. But for now, it's just kind of coming back into
Mhm.
the forefront of Magic, where instead of taking kind of some time off.
Yeah, so for Pioneer and Arena, I'll believe it when I see it because we've been
Yeah,
hearing it from them for about a year and a half
yeah,
now
yeah,
that,
yeah,
"Oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming." But,
yeah.
they did take some positive steps towards it, right? And I would love to see it on Arena. I would play it probably too much to, my own detriment because I do like the format quite a bit. I don't get to play it as much because I don't play a ton of paper right now.
Mhm.
But they did take some positive steps towards it, and it does seem like it is going to be coming to Arena. We've got the quote unquote like Pioneer format. It's called Explorer, I
Right.
believe, on Arena, and it's
Yeah.
like Pioneer Light right
Yeah.
now. So we got some of the stuff in there and some of the represented decks, but not all of them yet.
Right. And that feels like it could lead to a very odd scenario over because I think it's like probably a couple year timeline to
Mhm.
really to catch up. And so we'll have Pioneer Light and then Pioneer a little bit less light and then
Yeah,
Pioneer almost there.
fully leaded. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it'll take a while to get that going, but
Mhm.
I don't that's yeah, that's as a paper player,
Mhm.
primary like I will always think of myself as a paper Magic
Same.
player. It's awkward to like for I think if you're like a primary online player, like, oh, cool, they're changing the format like every month. But for us, it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're changing it every month, but you're still, yeah, we're just still short of where we want to be at.
I think the
But
official term for us is paper boomer, I think. If Drake was here, I think that's what he would call us still.
that's no good.
Well, I mean,
We
you and
gotta
I, we
we
played our first games of Magic and paper before most of the people who are playing in this tournament or watching the tournament were born, Joe. So
I I yeah I mean I learned how to play Magic before I learned how to use the internet.
yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. Well, we've got ourselves a few hours here to come up with a better term than paper boomer. In the meantime, we've got uh players set for round four. We're gonna start with modern this round, although we're talking about pioneer, but we're gonna
Sure.
start with modern this round and then see where things go. We've got a team from California. We mentioned there are a few teams. There's probably teams from quite a few places, as we
Yeah.
just have a packed house with 120 teams. But we have a few teams from California. We're gonna have feature one of them this round, including Ivan Espinosa, who won the Nerd Championship last year. One of the
A
two
player
players.
that really, catapulted himself into the limelight over probably about the last year when
Yeah.
paper magic has made a comeback. Evan Espinoza has made a huge name for himself, doing well all over NRG. He did really well in the Las Vegas. What was did they have like an official name of that event? The Channel Fireball Las Vegas event that happened. You and I were hanging out
Yeah.
a little bit there, but I think he either won it or like I think top 4 or something like that. It just lots of
Ye-
really good results. Great
Yeah,
player.
I'm with you on not actually knowing what that event was called, but yeah, he was there and he did very well. And you're and in other places too, as we see here. Okay, we've got things kicked off here. So on the left, we got Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajarshi Kolaventy. And then on the right, we have the California team of Justin Porchas, Ivan Espinosa, and Chris Iaall. And we're starting
Yeah.
with
So we have one of
Marty
the
and Ivan.
typical matchups here that you see where, the team of like some more known players versus a team that they haven't had a chance to make their name yet. But this is a good start for a lot of these guys. Vincent Daniels obviously is a pretty known player, but I haven't heard of some of these guys before. But hopefully they get to put on a good show here. And Ivan playing the deck that's really brought him to prominence here
Mhm.
over this time span that we talked about of how good he is. And it looks like he's going to offer a trade on these Ragavans right away.
Yeah, that's interesting for Marty, who has the kind of the permanent Ragavan.
Mhm.
So you're kind of, trading down because Ivan's is a temporary Ragavan, but does make the exchange. But you're right. Yeah, Ivan, the 4-color Yorion deck, that has really been the deck that he has had so much success with in Modern. And Marty with Izzet Murktide here,
Now,
obviously
if
a very capable deck, and potentially we can see some Streets of New Capenna cards, at least one. There's the possibility of Ledger Shredder showing up in some of these lists, although not a guarantee.
Yeah, little interesting spot here with the fetch on the stack. Ivan asked for a pause for a second because he has a couple cards that he could have played in response. It looks like he doesn't have. Is that he does have white man? I apologize. I think he has an Eldemir's Call in his hand that he could have fired off here with the shields down with no
Mhm.
counterspell being available from Marty. But I think Ivan's perfectly fine just taking this game a little bit slower. He actually doesn't want to play a faster game in this matchup, right? Like he generally wants to play a bit of a longer game.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. From Ivan's side, I mean, he has like one of the big things about the Murktide deck in whatever format you're playing is that it's so hard to deal with for a lot of decks. In the mirror, it's this huge creature, you just can't get rid of it. For Ivan, he's going to have a multitude of things that can get rid of it, so he's not going to be afraid of the late game bite at all. And yet, with Marty having a hand with a couple of counter spells, I feel like that's a good way to get to the late game where he may not want to be. So it may not be the ideal draw for him this game.
All right, first real spell from Ivan here is going to be a end of turn Eldamari's Call. It looks like he's going to go find one of his value engine cards, something along those lines. Maybe find an Omnath. Lots of really good. There we go. Risen Reef. Nice little value engine moving into his third turn. Marty, like you said, set up to play a long game here and to play well with one of those Murktides. If he gets up to 4 mana and enough cards in his graveyard, he could play a Murktide with Counterspell back up one turn. And that's really where you want to be in this matchup. The thing is Ivan does have a decent bit of answers, but he's going to need possibly 2 this game to be able to do something about a giant Murktide. Things like Solitude come to mind, but
Right.
you see a lot of ways to protect that from Marty here. So I think this game's going to come down to is this, a Murktide going to be
Ooh,
good enough in this game? Oh, it looks like no third land from Ivan.
yeah. Well, now the focus has got to change from Marty's perspective because I mean you have your counter spells, but you don't want to be playing a long game now. You want to get as big as advantage as you can grab before Ivan's mana turns on.
So that's a really, really good point, Joe. And I think that's something people don't think about sometimes when they're in this situation. Their opponent misses a land drop here, which means your opponent's hand is chock full of spells. So
Mhm.
if you play a longer game and they start drawing lands, you are at a severe disadvantage at that point because they have 7 spells in their hand. And here comes that turn that we talked about here. This looks like this might not be the biggest Murktide of all time. It's going to be pretty good, but the fact that it's going to have 2 mana left up for this counterspell here puts Marty solely in the driver's seat here.
Yeah. Yeah, really I feel like it's easy to get torn and I find myself in this place a lot. If you're in this situation, your opponent has 7 cards, they miss a land drop. Do you just pass and then hope they discard the hand size? Or do you try and take over the game, which is what we're seeing Marty doing? And I think it's often the right choice, but it's kind of hard to decide, I feel like, in
Yeah,
some spots.
I find it situational, right? Like in
Yeah.
some matchups, like if I'm okay playing a long game, yeah, I want them to start discarding spells. But in this one, where you have something that's like very proactive, like you see with this Murktide here, and I love this bait here from Ivan.
Mhm.
He's going to lead with Ridden 6, which he's great if this resolves, right? He does get him his third land, and rightfully Marty counterspells it, but then there is the Solitude behind this that can't be counterspelled, and that's one of the situations where you see Ivan kind of pausing a little bit and thumbing some cards around his hand, almost kind of telegraphing that he had possibly, an answer to the Murktide there. And I wonder if like Marty could have maybe picked up on that, or if he just doesn't care. He's like, you know what? I have things to do. I have stuff to use my mana on. If I can
Mhm.
keep you from having mana, I get such advantage that it's not even going to matter anymore
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, even the worst case scenario there, which is probably what happened from Marty's perspective with the Solitude, it's still, 2 cards out of Ivan's hand. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's
Al-
tolerable, I
Also, you don't
suppose.
just lose if the Murktide dies as well. You get to keep
Yeah.
playing. You're still, at an advantage mana wise here, but it's one of the things you have to look at your hand. Your hand has technically 3 spells left in it. You have a Bolt, which isn't super great in this matchup, a Counter Spell, which is, and you have Otawara, which is like kind of a bounce spell, but it's not amazing in this
Mhm.
matchup. And then you got this Ragavan off the top. So at least some action added to the hand here. And with a Bobble Draw, it's going to add even more card velocity here for Marty.
Yeah. Okay. So a bolt from Ivan and a decision for Marty here.
Are you counterspelling here? Are you
I
playing
think
Protect
I
the Queen?
am.
You're
I
playing
think
Protect the
I
Queen
am.
here at this point? Yeah.
I think the only way I have left to try and press the advantage
Mhm.
is to connect with Ragavan and play cards out of Ivan's deck.
And I think you saw the exact kind of thought go through Marty's head there. You saw him kind of almost shrug counterspell there, right? He's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I guess I'm going to counterspell you." Is that an abundant growth off the
It
top if
it
Marty
is.
wants to use
Yeah.
his mana here?
Yeah. And I mean there are treasures. Yeah. So I think yeah, Marty's gonna get that out there. I mean, he'll get a card at least.
He's gonna draw a card. I like using the treasure there. Like you can use mana. You can use this to make mana of any color, for the rest of the game. But also this lets him use his own lands a little bit better. It looks like he's gonna take a peek with the bauble here. Marty also with the consider in his hand. But yeah, he's just gonna play this a little bit slow because he's not gonna be able to really add another threat to the board. He's looking for one of those big threats here, Joe. What do you think?
Mhm. No, yeah, I mean, more Murktides is good. We don't like during these team events, we don't bother really examining deck lists. We just go from match to match. So
Mhm.
we
Don't
know the
really have
exact
time for
contents of
that.
his deck list. I guess I could try and pull it up here for myself
I think I
and
saw
relay it over.
is that a Ledger Shredder card y'all were having a lot of fun with
Oh,
earlier?
it is. It is a Ledger Shredder. You are right about that.
The most expensive rare in the history of Magic, pretty much at this point.
Is
Yeah, I'm joking, but
it is. I'm sure they are. The new cards tend to be pricey. There are 2 copies of Ledger Shredder in the deck. So that is the kind of the addition to the offensive capabilities, and we see it there.
yeah, a card that I slightly overlooked when I was looking at the spoiler of the set because like a lot of people, when I first read it, I didn't realize hey, this can trigger from your opponent's stuff
Right.
as
Mhm.
well. And so that just makes the card so much better. The fact that it can go back and forth. You're seeing it even getting some play in like formats like Legacy and stuff as well. It does look like an Endurance is going to come in here and sabotage this Ragavan that's been running crazy this game.
Yeah, okay, it's gonna be
Oh boy.
ephemorated, yeah, to stick around. And then is there mana for let's see, Ragavan's a legend, but Otawara costs 4, so that would be yeah, so we're still short.
Yeah, you need one more.
Yeah.
Now, there is a bolt in Marty's hand to help finish off this endurance, and you're kind of incentivized to do this, right? Since you have another flying threat in play, plus this would trigger the Ledger Shredder.
That's true. And that the endurance is gonna blink again, and I mean, losing your graveyard at this point doesn't matter too much, but yeah, okay, there it is.
But every card counts in it, right? Even if you can get
Yeah.
one or two in there, at this point, you have what 6, 7 mana in play. I mean, I've made 4/4 Murktides before in matchups like this and had it be okay. You just
Yeah.
need to make sure that Bolt can't pick it off. And the kind of land that Marty wants to draw here, that Fiery Islet there is a land that also can be used to cash in a card as well. Very
Mhm.
good draw off the top
Yeah.
here for Marty as well.
Yeah, Archmage Charm has a lot of potential here. So here is the consider pre-combat.
Ooh,
Looking for a way to put a counter on that Shredder.
I will say, drawing this counterspell at the top is actually pretty sweet here because this allows you to be really aggressive if you want to. Now you can use the charm to draw 2 cards,
Mhm.
activate Shredder. Now this is going to put a plus counter on it. You're going to draw 2 more cards, which draws you another counterspell because like you don't have to sit there and just sit on your charm as like your only protection type
Right.
spell.
Yeah.
And so
So
now you're kind of cooking here because your Shredder has kind of found you more card velocity here by getting further into your deck and finding these charms and plus counterspells is gonna be great. Can I even draw land? I think you finally did.
yeah, so a chance to get things going. Here's the fairy, but yeah, like you're saying, Marty is now well set up. No counter for the Ledger Shredder because a land was pitched, but counterspell takes down to fairy, and I mean it's not much of an offense, but
It's going to be hopefully, I mean, hopefully for Marty, just enough. Well,
Oh,
we spoke too soon.
yeah.
This
So
fixes all the problems, Joe. I absolutely adore this card, but I think it might be borderline too good.
it is a strong one indeed. Now
Oh,
here are okay, and there's another strong one. So so actually it was not any land there. It was 3 spell choices. Marty chooses to dump Mishra's Bauble. He
yeah, put
just
expressive iteration into his hands. He has a backup one, and he's going
mm,
to exile this Murktide and be able to cast this Murktide from exile. This was probably one of the best iterations you could have had in this spot.
yeah, this is excellent. And so Marty doing a lot of late game stuff here, casting multiple spells a turn. And we speculated that Ivan would be maybe favored in the late game, but Ivan isn't in the late game.
Yeah.
He's still got 3 land in play. And so this is going to be tough to keep up here.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to anymore. Ivan,
Yeah.
he had maybe a couple of turns there where if he found his third land and maybe started getting resolved, something it could have gotten back in this game. But once he missed for about the third turn in a row or second turn in a row, and Marty started, getting to the point where he's just sculpting his hand because he has a
Mhm.
threat in play, I think the game has started to slip from Ivan. And I'm not saying he can't win from here, but it's looking very, very difficult.
Yeah. All right. Another Teferi. I mean, that would be great and everything. No.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be met with another counterspell, which Marty's been able to utilize very well this game. He's kind of been having at least one left over in a lot of these spots. And Ivan at 13, he's about to take a large chunk of damage this turn. I don't know what I'll say. Can lethal be found this turn with the other Murktide?
I
Let's see here.
would.
It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, I think this.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah, I think you
is.
can find lethal here. Yeah.
Yeah.
The old Murktide fireball play.
Yeah. So Murktide, second Murktide grows the first one. And
What an abundant of riches here, too. This expressive energy finds yet another expressive iteration and a counterspell in case that wasn't going to be enough. Yeah, Marty firing on all cylinders here. All right, looks like we're going
Ledger
to cast the
Shredder
expressive generation.
continues to not grow. There it is. It gets a counter finally. Spell Pierce will pitch for Connive. And Ivan's just waiting.
He's like, "Am I dead yet? Can you kill me? We move on to game 2." All right, this is the second expressive iteration. Plus, is the bolt just lethal itself? It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think the bolt is just lethal itself. Plus, does he have a? I don't think you even need counterspell here.
Yeah, but yeah, by choosing Bolt instead of Murktide, the counterspell is able to be held. Oh, no, you're right. There's only 2 mana left. It's so easy. Well, maybe not easy, but I'm dumb to confuse the Sulfur Falls with Abundant Growth as 2 land when it's actually only 1.
Okay, boomer. Yep, we'll go ahead and just. Looks like we're just going to go ahead and fire off the bolt here and put Ivan out of his misery. Yep, he's like, all right, that's mine. Let's go back over here. And Ivan's going to go ahead and scoop this up and go on to game 2. Now, from Ivan's side, how do you like this matchup? Do you generally like to be on the side of the 4-color Omnath deck, or do you like to be on the side of the Izzet player? But if you're on the Omnath side, you generally need to be making your 3rd and 4th land drops on
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. Yeah, in general, I think the 4-color side has the tools to fight the longer games. They have the exile removal to deal with the Murktide, the big threats. They have the cheap removal. They have the card advantage. Well, maybe they're more even in card advantage. And you have the Yorion, which just waits around to come in and just take over the game. But all these cards cost mana, and Ivan just never got going that game. So I still would have. I mean, being a game down, I'm never going to say a player was favored in the match, but I would say in each of the 2 remaining games, Ivan is probably favored individually in those games.
Mhm.
But we'll see. We're going to switch over to Pioneer and see how things are looking over there, as this is the only format remaining where the players are still in game 1 and still going. We have Justin Porchas with Mono Green Devotion versus Vincent Daniels and Izzet Prowess. There's another Ledger Shredder.
So this is pretty cool. So this is like new school versus old school. Now this is the newer version of Mono Green, but this is one of the like original powerhouses
Mm-hmm.
of Pioneer. Mono Green was seen as one of the more powerful decks. In fact, getting multiple cards banned at the beginning of this format when cards were getting banned on a weekly basis. And it's just stood the test of time, mostly behind the power of Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, just generating absurd amounts of mana, which you see Justin doing this turn. And then you've
Mhm.
got kind of the newer kid on the block. Like we've seen Izzet Prowess type decks before, but this one's been really taking off recently with, additions like Expressive Iteration and Ledger Shredder, the card that we can't speak enough to how good it is. And boy, oh boy, is Ledger Shredder pretty good in a format where Treasure Cruise is legal.
Yeah. No, we saw that last round. Just a bunch of conniving leading to Treasure Cruises being more free than Wizards probably intended in a format that doesn't have, you know, quite the fetch lands that you see
Mhm.
in the older formats. But we see all kinds of nonsense here. With Cavalier, the big things, Cavalier of Thorns for Justin, as well as the Sky console. And
The
there's Ledger
boat.
Shredders 3-5. I mean, it's getting there, but not quite battling yet.
Yeah, I mean it's a big one. It can survive a boat activation and possibly get into combat, but you probably wouldn't be able to survive blocking one of the 2 or 3 big attacks from Justin
Mhm.
just yet. But it looks like we might be having another spell here this turn. Get the Ledger Shredder up a little bit. Plus, I think there's a what is that? A Fading Hope in Vincent's hand as well. So he's got a little bit of removal. Usually they have, what is it? Reckless Rage, I think is the name of the one where you do 2
Mhm.
damage to your own creature, 4 to your opponents.
Yeah.
Generally a really good card against creature decks. But in this matchup, it's pretty much only going to hit elves. The creatures that it's going to hit are going to be the elf, stuff like Landware Elf. But the other creatures that Justin's going to put on the board are going to be a little too large for Reckless Rage to take down. But
Yeah, that's frustrating. I mean, given this opponent, Vincent would probably rather have, you know, 1 damage to several creatures, not, 4 damage to 1. It's just like you're saying, it's 3 wasted damage.
mhm. Yeah,
But
let's see
maybe it
what.
could
Go ahead.
combine with Ledger Shredder to take down one of the more significant cards.
Mhm.
But
See what Justin's got here. Just a bevy. I mean, he's just got so much mana on
yeah.
his own turn. And does he have I think he has a Storm the Festival in his graveyard. At least one I see down there. And this is one of the cards that, again, is really kind of revamped the mono green deck. So
Mhm.
this allows him to look at the top 5 cards of his library and he gets to put 2 permanent cards. There we go, up on the screen. 2 permanent cards with mana value 5 or less from among them on the battlefield, which is practically everything in the deck, or at least most of the really good hits. You can find another Cavalier, you can find a Karn, a lot of those really good cards. And it also has flashback for 10, which sounds like a lot. But in this deck, you're generally only tapping 2 to 3 lands for it. And you're seeing another recent, really, like, I want to say addition, but it's just a card that we realized how good it was in this deck. And that is Kiora. I think this one is Beckoner of Behemoths, I believe is the name of this one. There's so many different ones, Joe.
There are,
And
yeah. So
in this,
we'll get the
okay.
relevant text, but yeah, you're
Uh,
right. There are. So this one is untap a permanent is the only activated ability, I believe, and then its
yes.
static ability is when you have a creature with power 4 or greater. So basically, your non-elves then come into play. Then just can draw a card. So we see, yeah, 2 planeswalkers come into play. Uh,
And
there are
I,
some some you know decision tree on how you're building your sideboard in these mono green decks because I have seen it with Karn. I've also seen it with Vivian where you have the creature wish as opposed to the artifact wish, and you're
Yeah,
not going
this
to play
is the
both.
more this is the more like traditional build of it
Mhm.
now is the Karn Wish. The Vivian is kind of, there's some people still doing it, but not as much. But what you're seeing here is you're going to see Justin really flex his muscles because he's going to be able to do this, just whatever he wants this turn because the Kiora is still active and can untap this Nykthos. Now we don't have an actual, as I say, yeah, I didn't think Vincent was going to be able to survive this turn.
Mhm.
And there's multiple things they can do here. I'd have to see the exact sideboard from Justin, but there's all kinds of things you can do when you get upwards of 20, 30, 40 mana, which I'm not being hyperbolic here. He actually had that much mana this turn very, very easily.
Mhm.
And you can do all kinds of crazy stuff out of the sideboard with the Karn Wish package. And you can do things that, borderline go infinite, as well as just huge value plays. But it looks like we're going to head back over to Modern, a game where it looks like Ivan Espinosa has actually made his land drops on time.
Well, that is a key facet to his plan of actually evening up this match. And so, yeah, just to conclude that previous game, so the card that Justin did wish for was Meteor Golem, which is a 3/3 artifact creature that comes into play and blows something up. And so that takes down Ledger Shredder and clears a path for the rest of the team.
uh, Limited all-star meteor golem
I
that has made
guess.
its way. Yeah. But it just fills a role, right? Like it's an
Yeah.
artifact that you can wish for when you have a ton of mana that answers everything because it comes
Right.
into play and destroys a permanent. And then it actually just leaves behind a 3/3 body, which, yeah, that like that's just fine. It's just good enough, right? You just need cleanup crew at that
Hmm.
point from the mono green deck. So it looks like Ivan Espinosa's team is up 2-1 here. Two of the first games going to him, but he is actually down a game in his match. Since this is a team event, a lot of people at home, you're playing your traditional match where you're trying to win 2 of 3, but you're also trying to win 2 of 3 overall from your
Hmm.
teams here. So that's another reason why you saw Ivan just kind of sticking it out in game one. Not that he like couldn't win, but you take every little opportunity you can to get every single win for your team when you're playing for more than just yourself. So I definitely like just playing out that game to its actual conclusion because sometimes I know I get frustrated when I miss my land drops for 4 turns and just be like, all right, let's just move on to the next game. I don't want to waste any more time.
All right, so Murktide in here for looks like a 5/5 maybe.
Yeah, large Murktide very early. No counter spell able to hold up like it was in game one, but this will survive all the removal spells that don't just kill anything. It would
Hmm.
take double bolt, I believe, here. And did I see double bolt in Ivan's hand? I only got a quick view of it, but I might be wrong on that. I want to
I
give a
didn't.
shout out to all the viewers at home too. It looks like we just got over 500. Thanks for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't get a look at Ivan's hand at all, so I'm not sure if there's double bolt or not. I was actually kind of interested in the idea, just the fact that Chris Iaall is here playing.
Mhm.
Chris is a longtime LNG player who has kind of strayed a little bit away from the game. He's gotten into Flesh and Blood, which you know plenty about, but
Yeah, I didn't want to bring it up. I was about to say I'm used to covering this guy, but for another game.
yeah, but the by virtue of the team event, there's something that can happen in team events. You have two players, and you're like, hey, third friend, you used to play Magic. We need another player. Get your butt over here.
You're a boomer. We need someone for the boomer format.
Exactly. All right. So Teferi to attempt to bounce the Murktide, but actually gets subtletied, I believe, back to the top of the deck.
Yeah, the incarnation that we see the least, right, in modern
Yes.
is the blue one. But when it's good, boy, is it really good, Joe. And you see another one of the new Kapana cards making its implication here. I don't know the names of all the new triomes, but one of the new triomes here to kind of just round out this mana base from Ivan's 4-color deck, just giving the last one in there, so now it has all of them.
Hmm. So okay, here's
So
a
it looks like we're
bolt.
gonna have a Fury passed up behind this as well. So he's gonna go ahead and make sure he doesn't take any damage here
That's
from
a
this
heavy
Murktide.
cost to pay.
Yeah, this is one really heavy cost to pay, but I think this is something that so Ivan's a little worried, right? That if say like another Murktide comes behind this or some other form of aggression, that not
Hmm.
only is he going to take a bunch of damage this turn, then he's going to play Teferi, bounce one of the permanents, right? And then Marty's going to be like, all right, kill your Teferi, keep pressing my advantage, and then replay one of those threats again. So what this is Ivan is like over committing to make sure that he gets to play this game longer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a reasonable plan, but yeah, that was a cost. Okay, so here's
Yeah, absolutely.
Ren in 6, which if it resolves can get a land back and then lead to Teferi, which so Marty is aware of the only card in Ivan's hand here.
He knows that there's a Teferi from on top of the deck, so he knows that if he counterspells this, there's no other follow-up play this turn. So
Mhm.
while in this situation, Teferi might actually be a stronger threat and something he's more worried about, the fact that it can't be followed up here leads him to go ahead and just fire off this counterspell. Not to mention the fact that he's going to be able to play 2 threats here this turn, so the Teferi is not going to be able to just come up, bounce one, and have protection itself. And now you see Legislator really carrying its weight
Yeah.
this turn.
Yeah, so these ledger shredders, they're not always going to grow, but just being able to filter through the deck, trading
Mhm.
that steam vents out for, you know, any card, in which this case I think it might have been an iteration, but
Yeah.
anything you can do there is just of huge benefit. And now that the fairy does make it into play.
Yeah, this is going to just draw a card and, kind of buy some time here for Ivan Espinosa. For everybody at home, the new ability Connive on Ledger Shredder, it allows you to loot, right? It allows you to draw a card and discard a card. But if you discard a non-land card, then the creature grows. It puts a +1/+1 counter on that. Though with the hand and the mana base the way it is for Marty, he's pretty incentivized to keep every spell that he draws here. So you're probably not going to see the Ledger Shredder grow too often in these
Mhm.
spots.
Mm. But one power is all it takes to kill a Teferi that bounces Dragon Rage Channeler. And
Oh
Marty's
boy.
got okay. So Carnospell Iteration and Dragon Rage Channeler is the hand.
Yeah, I think you just start this turn off by, I was about to say, you can start off however you want by attacking here or just casting Expressive Iteration. Now, I was going to say, it looks like he's going to go ahead and do it this way too. This gives him 3 looks at a land here if he wants as well to be able to hold up Counterspell. But it looks like Marty might take the safer route and just not give himself the chance to miss on an untapped land here. But yeah, I was supposed to say it's hard to pass up on casting Expressive Veneration this turn.
Yeah, especially when land is what you want, and that's the card that it's actually you get. Wow, it's 5 looks at
Yeah, I
it.
forgot it's got the extra look too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the Ledger Shredder first off. Now we have the Dragon Rage Channeler.
Now we have Expressive Iteration finally resolving. And was the third card no land? It looks like no land here. So he's not going to be able to hold up Counterspell, but I think it's going to be just fine because he's going to, do that. He's going to add a card to him. Ragavan went to the bottom. I didn't catch what went to the, it looks like another Expressive. Joe, the Expressive Iterations always find the second one, apparently.
And then...
So it looks like we're going to keep going here, and this does actually find the land if he wants it here, but this is awkward.
What draw was that?
It's from Ledger Shredder, right? Oh, but
I think okay, yeah, we saw the hands go up there. So
yeah,
so Ledger Shredder, I do not believe can trigger more than once a turn. It's not every 2 spells; it's just the second one.
Yeah, it's just the second spell this turn. So there's an extra card in the hand here. With all the cantrips this turn, adding cards to his hand plus the bauble, maybe he was resolving the... Yeah, it looks like he pointed Ragavan. He was like trying to resolve the I'm sorry, not Ragavan, the Death DRC trigger. Yeah. And so the card just went to his hand. We know what the card was, but they don't down there. I don't know what kind of delay we're on. I don't know if we're allowed to help with this here.
We're not on a delay today because it's a paper event, not a online event. So
because we know what the card was that was drawn here. It was the land.
Correct. Yeah. So if you could radio over the coverage, could radio over to the spotter and see if that's relevant to the judges or not.
Yeah, it might not be. I know sometimes you're allowed to use this stuff to help out with certain calls, and sometimes you're not. So yeah, so it does look like it's going to be the quote unquote Thoughtseize fix, as we call this, where the hand's going to reveal to Ivan. Ivan gets to choose the card here, and this is awkward for Ivan as well too, because if he leaves him with land counterspell, then you can just play the land, play the counterspell. So you could take the Expressive Iteration here to like kind of slow the game down. I was gonna say, I think you just have to take counterspell in this spot though. Yeah. And so what you're seeing here, the card that is going to be put on the bottom is because they know that card should be there. So they're going to randomize the deck, and they know the known information of the bottom card of the deck. So that's going to be staying where it was. And now I guess we're going to actually resolve the DRC trigger. Okay. So it looks like we got a full fix from the judge staff here. The card was kept on top. That's got to be a little scary if you're Ivan. And
yeah, definitely, especially because that bauble can draw it right away, or at least before Ivan gets a turn.
Yeah, I don't think there was a land played here this turn, so I think Ivan might have missed yet another one here. That's right, he did miss the turn with Renin 6 was being played. He was trying to find another land to play the... Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that was a mess, but we are square now, And
Joe, that was a mess, but this is the kind of turn that, I mean, I mess up all the time. Everybody messes up. I mean, what, 13 cards got seen that turn, I think?
We talked about how Ledger Shredders might get messed up without the online, tracking of the triggers. However, that's not the way we anticipated it getting messed up. We thought they would be missed, not accidentally doubled up on.
Yep. And I like the main phasing of the Solitude here. How do you feel about that? And what are you killing? I mean... Both of the cards, this is the thing about the blue-red deck, right? The non-Murktide threats are all pretty redundant, right? DRC plus Ledger Shredder just keep garnishing tons of value. The same thing with if you can get Ragavan onto a board where it can attack or block. They're all just really good by themselves. And then Murktide comes down, doesn't do anything extra besides the fact that it's just a giant flying threat.
Yeah, so Ivan's making his choice.
I think he's consulting one of his teammates here. This is something you're going to see in team events, that every now and then some of these choices, especially the bigger ones, might take an extra second or two because you get to lean on your teammates a little bit, right? You've got Chris Iaall, you've got Justin here sitting next to him that are very good players, right? And so you're like, hey, like I'm a little unsure here. This is why I want this one. This is why I want this one. What's your initial thought? And if their initial thought is the same as yours, you go with that one. If theirs is different, then you got to 30 seconds or so to talk it out. When you play team events, Joe, do you talk to your teammates a lot?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that much help is passed back and forth. So I think it's more of you. It's just like if you're playing online and there's like if you have a friend sitting next to you, or you're just playing on like a shared screen or something, you ask for confirmation regularly. even though you know what you're doing.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
just like, what would you do here? Do you agree with this? Yeah, of course. There at 2, you have a lightning bolt to win the game. Like, oh, I was just checking. And
I
so,
shouldn't
yeah,
play around anything, right?
yeah. So in that sense, yeah, the teammate having teammates does slow things down, and I'm not sure that you always gain from it. Sometimes you do, and when you do, it's probably significant. But
Mhm.
90% of the consultations are probably worthless.
Yeah, so these are my favorite kinds of tournaments. I love team tournaments. I've played in them a bunch. Generally, I'm teaming with Ross Merriam and Brendan DeCandio. I've teamed with you a few times. It's been
Mhm.
great every time. I have a rule where like if I'm in the like dead in the middle of a game, unless I'm about to make a huge blunder, like don't talk to me. Like don't break up my my train
Yeah.
of thought because I'm gonna mess up after that. Especially Brendan. Brendan is just not allowed to talk to me while I'm playing games.
Hmm. All right. So we've got iteration. I think there's Jace, Bolt, and Ragavan in hand here. So Marty is once again probably looking for a land on this iteration.
I think the Jace was the card that was put to the top and immediately left
That
last
makes
turn, and you
sense.
can kind of see why, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be really good. Like that's another feather in the cap for Marty's deck here after sideboard in his match because, like you said, Ivan wants the game to go longer here, and he's generally favored in that. So something like Jace the Mind Sculptor out of these sideboard cards, out of these sideboard slots, is something that helps the blue red deck keep pace late in the game. Because
Mhm.
here's the thing their cards aren't on the same power level as the four color deck, pound for pound as the game goes on. But when you have a card like Jace and Expressive Iteration that see 2 or 3 cards every single time you play one of them, your cards are more castable than your opponents. You're not playing as many 4 drops, as many 5 drops, and you're not pitching to cast some of your spells. You have more 1 and 2 drops. So at that point, it's kind of like the Delver thing in Legacy, right? Where like you keep up with the bigger, more expensive decks because you're just more lean and you're going to be seeing as many cards
Mhm.
as they do, but you're going to be casting them more efficiently.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, if you have weaker cards, but you cast twice as many of them, you're probably
Yeah,
commanding
you're going
ahead.
to
So
win.
here's the Bolt
Yeah.
on the
It's
Solitude.
it's like the mono red decks in standard and in like Pioneer. It's like, yeah, my cards in general are a tiny bit weaker than yours, but I'm going to cast 4 of them in the first 2
Right.
turns, or
Yeah.
3 of them in the first 2 turns. Yeah.
All right, here's an attack over. So Marty's other card is an Ether Gust in hand, so that's going to be uncastable for the turn, and that's something that I mean, Ether Gust could potentially do a fair amount in this matchup. He has taken that down for the turn to
Mhm.
get the hit in with Ragavan.
Do you think it has something to do with the fact that Ivan only had 1 card left? Do you think he's just trying to press his advantage?
I'm sure that would be reasonable. Both of Ivan's cards turn out to be fairly decent, although I guess not really game breaking based on the board state that Marty has right now.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's a 3/3 DRC here.
Yeah, probably has to be. And
There's been
Ivan's
so
down
many
to
cards in
11.
and out of the graveyards, it's very hard to track.
Yeah. Chris Iaall has picked up the legacy match with 8 cast in actually the 8 cast mirror.
Chris
Uh,
Iali winning matches of card games while I'm in the booth.
yeah.
I'm getting kind of used to it.
Yeah, he is skilled at this hobby that we all partake in. All right, so Ivan picks up a land, has his Risen Reef and his Rented Six. So this Ether Gust can put either one of these cards back, and in response to the fetch land, potentially shuffle them away.
Yeah, speaking of legacy, we got the legacy setup here possibly. Lots of ways to get through the card, so you're never going to quote unquote brainstorm lock yourself. For people at home that maybe don't play a lot of legacy, Jace has the ability of drawing 3 cards, and then you put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your library. If you don't have any way to clear those cards from the top of your library and they're not good, we call that quote unquote getting brainstorm locked because now you have to draw those bad cards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the worst feelings in all of Magic, where you know the top cards of your deck and you're losing and they're not going to help you. But
Well,
this deck is very good at clearing the top cards of its deck.
yeah, as we continually are seeing there, even well, or not seeing in that case. I don't know what got flipped over, but
Marty
something
has it
did.
perfectly set up to have us blocked from this. Yeah.
And Marty's like, yeah, these 3 cards are the iteration. None of them are in my hand. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that again.
Yeah. And this is something that can happen. I know I've gone through problems like this when you have a bunch of cards that all do very similar things. Like Expressive Iteration, quote unquote, draws 3 cards, but they're not actually in your hand, right? Jace
Mhm.
draws 3 cards, they're in your hand, but then 2 of them aren't afterwards. But then when you play spells, DRC triggers, you look at the top card of your library, and then you can move it to your graveyard. And then Ledger Shredder draws a card and then lets you discard a card. All of those are very similar abilities, but different. And so when you have 3 or 4 of them in play at a time and you're triggering all of them and you're not playing online where it tracks it all for you, it can get very messy and very difficult. And you're going to be playing this 7 rounds today most likely. You're going to mess it up somewhere. It's just going to happen.
All right, 5 damage across. Endurance flips to Ragavan. That is not castable as there's only 2 treasures for Marty. And Ether Gust is castable off the treasures on the Ren 6, but I'm not sure that's a good use of Marty's resources at this point.
Yeah, I think you're just trying to stop the big spells here, right?
Yeah.
Something like Omnath resolving, and then
Right.
him gaining a bunch of life, getting a bunch of extra mana, and Ivan really having a problem this match with A, keeping up with the velocity of the blue-red deck, and then B, his mana's kind of gotten him, right? Like, it wasn't good in game 1. Now in game 2, his mana's good, but now he's got a little bit too much of it. Like, he's not getting the spells he needs. Here's that Aether Gust you were talking about.
Yeah. All right. Ether Gust, Dragon Channel triggers again. Ivan with just a land in hand. So he knows the Ragavan is there. So that's 5 damage. He's on 6.
Looks like the trigger for the DRC is going to resolve. It's going to leave the card on top. Looks like this is going to
that
put on top. Yep.
endurance. The endurance going to the top. I think does that seal the game? Because there's 5 damage incoming, and then 2 attackers next turn. Endurance isn't going to stop that.
Is it better than he also has a fetch land here to kind of clear if he wants to, but yeah, I was about to say I don't know if this is.
He's going to 1. He can't fetch.
Yeah, I was gonna say he can't even fetch. Yeah, he's gonna play.
Oh,
Okay, there we go.
He knew
Yeah,
it was gonna
Ragavan.
flip
There we
over.
go.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so Ivan obviously in a better spot than us. He knows what's going on. I was right there with you. I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, I trust Ivan. It's one of the situations. I trust Ivan to get this right. What am I missing? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So endurance is cleared by, and it doesn't matter as Ivan draws land anyway. Ragavan clears the endurance, but right at that point, probably Omnath would have been just about it. So we are even up. So let's go right to the Pioneer match. We have Justin Porchas and Vincent Daniels playing for the fates of their teams in round 4 of this event.
And here's an actual good target for those Reckless Rages that I was talking about. Sometimes we still see cards like Old Grove Troll in mono green where this card does a lot of duty in this deck. So it's just a really good 3-drop, right? It's a 4/4 for 3 mana with trample. That's just good. But it has 3 pips of devotion, right? It has, cost 3 green mana. This is a huge play from Vincent Daniels here, being able to answer this Karn for 1 mana. But the fact that it's also just a 4/4, it just stays in front of a lot of these cards that Vincent Daniels has. Like you see, he's got 2 Monastery Swift Spears here that are not doing much this game.
Right. That Spell Pierce actually prevented a troll from attacking there, as you don't want to trade a troll for a Swift Spear. With Prowess, that would have been the result. So Justin stays home. The life totals are accurate since we just jumped over to the match. Conceivably, they might need to catch up, but probably they're right. And then both players with quite a bit of life to play with, which favors the green side, I would assume.
It's generally going to favor the green side, but I think Vincent has one of the hands here this turn where he might be able to start to shove. So it looks like we're going to start with a Consider. So let's keep count here. That's 1 spell. So these Monastery Swift Spears are 2/3s. It looks like he's just going to draw. Is that a treasure? What is that? Is that a treasure cruise? It's hard to tell in some of Vincent's. It looks like he has like the matte sleeves. It looks like he's just going to say go. So he's setting up for a big turn here. Maybe has something like a Disdainful Stroke or Counterspell of some kind to make sure no huge turn comes out of Justin's side.
Disdainful Stroke's excellent against a green deck. It hits all the
everything that matters. Yeah, everything that matters. Yeah. Speaking of cards that matter, here is a Storm the Festival. And it does look like a Disdainful Stroke. I thought that was the alternate art Disdainful Stroke. Becky's not here this weekend, but I'm going to try to do my best impression of her as I can for you, Joe.
Yeah, no. We do tend to rely on her for those kind of things.
I'm getting better. I've been making a conscious effort. I'm trying to get better at it.
So these old
I think we're on art number 10 for Disdainful Stroke recently.
What was that?
I said I think we're on different art number 10 for Disdainful Stroke.
I don't even keep track. I don't even know what sets the arts I do know. I don't even know what set they're from.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I think that's one of the older promo ones. Vincent with a very tricked out deck here, right? Like lots of really cool versions of the cards, foils, full art, extended arts. You gotta love it. Those lands are absolutely gorgeous. Love seeing that. I love the fact that here's the thing. Some people might not like the customability of the cards. There's 17 different arts for certain cards, but I love it in the fact that you get to kind of customize your deck in the way that you like, right? It's kind of like a personal statement. Like, look at Ivan's deck that we just covered.
Yeah.
He has like the coolest version of every card in his deck because that deck is his deck. It's his baby. It's his labor of love. And I love the fact that you get to do this. I mean, you even get to use the bad choices too. Like if you wanted to play revised basic lands in your deck, you're allowed to.
Well, yeah, we have to. I mean,
Got
basic
them.
lands, I think, is a very cool way to allow customization because there's 900 different kinds, and you can play, basics if you're classy, or you could play revised if you're classy. I mean, or you could play. Justin's got this is one of the unsets, I think, maybe the original ones.
That's the original one, yeah, which
Yeah,
is
the
unglued.
unglued, I think, is the
Yeah.
first one. I don't even know.
I
All right,
think
so here is
unglued
the
was
treasure
first and
cruise.
unhinged was second, I believe. I like the
Uh,
unhinged ones a lot, but the unglued ones are gorgeous too.
yeah, so I think you were right about the treasure cruise the previous turn, but Vincent was waiting until it was cheaper.
Mhm.
So he does
Make
cast
sure to
it.
leave up disdainful stroke here
Right.
too. Some stuff. He's just setting up to have one gigantic turn where I think he's going to be able to either push lethal or be a back breaking turn against Justin here. The blue red deck is an aggro deck, but you get to play it this way, right? You don't have to just shove every turn.
Mm-hmm.
That is a Wolf Willow Haven being added to a land here. So let that land tap for 2 mana, or which I think he's doing here, he's going to go ahead and pay 5 and just make a 2/2. So a card
Yeah.
that
Okay.
does double duty in this deck, where early in the game it's mana acceleration, and then later in the game you can at least cash it in for something.
Yeah.
This to me though signals Justin has a very weak hand. If I was Vincent Daniels,
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't. I mean, well, okay, it's going to trade with a card anyway.
play with
But yeah,
fire.
I mean, Vincent played what, a couple mana for an 8 mana treasure cruise, and Justin spent 7 mana for a 2 mana Wolf Willow Haven that made a
Yep.
2/2.
And so that's where the blue red deck is really, and I think this is the turn where you're gonna possibly see this get moved. It matters what happens with off. He's still got disdainful stroke in his hand again, so he can play it a little careful. So another Monastery Spirit getting added. Maybe he's gonna slow play for one more turn. Another Monastery Spirit, yeah. So it looks like
Wow.
it's just gonna be a go set up for the turn where maybe an expressive iteration happens into. He does have one burn spell in his hand, but he has everything kind of covered here with that disdainful stroke, like you're talking about, it stops everything that matters. Because I believe the last card in Justin's hand is a Kevin Caryatid.
Yeah, that won't help. This Nykthos has got devotion of 7, so that
Okay.
might allow the
Storm the
from the
Festival.
the flashback here. But you're saying
And we
Vincent
have
probably
this
has that
disdainful stroke.
covered. Yeah,
And
there's
so
the
this is why
disdainful stroke.
Vincent, yeah, and this is why Vincent, sorry for talking over you there, Jeff.
Yeah.
This is why Vincent had been kind of playing slow here in these spots. He wanted to make sure he didn't get the second Storm to Festival to beat him because he knows the hint in here. I think it might be go time, Joe. So it looks like a play with fire. So you're going to hit one of the trolls. So one of the trolls is going to have 2 damage on it. Trigger Prowess. It's going to have -2/-2 actually because there's a Soul Scar Mage in play.
Yeah, Justin's only chance here is if Vincent draws another Monastery Swiftspear.
Yeah. So it looks like we're going to go ahead and clear this one out. If he draws another, the 5th one, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I think is this a treasure cruise behind this as well? Yeah, this is going to be one gigantic turn.
Yeah, it's 5 prowess, guys. This is what, the 3rd trigger?
This is the 3rd trigger. So they're all 4 power right now. Plus, Vincent's not done. This deck is chock full of 1 mana spells, and I don't think he's made a land drop either this turn. So it does look like he drew 2 lands here, but it looks like he drew something else. As long as it's not a Monastery Swiftspear, as Joe put. So Fading Hope is going to go ahead and pick up the other Old Growth Troll. I think this is the 5th. So this is lethal.
Yeah, so this is bounce and then scry if the creature is small.
Yeah, but this should be lethal, I think, right, Joe? This is the 5th one?
If this is the 5th spell, then it...
Or 4th. It doesn't matter. They're 5
Yeah, you're
power,
right.
is what I
Even
meant.
4 is enough. Yep,
Yeah.
and that'll do it. So Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajarshi Kolaventy defeat Justin Porchas, Ivan Espinosa, and Chris Iaall in round 4 and remain undefeated with 3 rounds to go.